Hello and welcome to Peninsula Backstage, the show that looks inside local live theater and talks about upcoming productions that you can go see. I'm Nina Perry and I'm your host. The classic play, An Enemy of the People, was written by Henrik Ibsen in 1882 and adapted by Rebecca Lenkovich in 2008. An Enemy of the People is running at the Pear Theater in Mountain View from October 20th through November 12th. Today on Peninsula Backstage, we'll be talking with Betsy Cruz Craig, who is the director of the play and also the new artistic director at the Pear, Ron Talbot, who is playing the role of Thomas Stockman, and Richard Holman, who is playing the role of Peter Stockman. Betsy and Ron and Richard, welcome to Peninsula Backstage. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, before we dive into the play, Betsy, tell us about your new role as artistic director. What are the responsibilities of an artistic director, and what attracted you to the position?
The huge paycheck. Thank you. An artistic director of any theater company is really responsible for the artistic direction and mission of that theater company. And every theater company's direction is a little bit different. I have very big shoes to fill. Diane Tasca, who just recently retired, led and shaped the Pear for the last 15 years. And the Pear's mission has always been to try and balance out the season with a mix of classics and new works. We have a play development committee and a writers guild at the Pear. And also to try and present something new and challenging for the audiences. So I feel that my biggest responsibility as artistic director is to keep the integrity, the artistic integrity, and to keep the boat afloat. Yeah. To try and figure out the balance between what is challenging for the artistic community and what is really engaging and challenging and wonderful for our audiences to come and see. So I think that's the real core of what an artistic director does is try to maintain that artistic mission and hold on to artistic integrity.
Okay. So what are the Pear's strengths and what do you see as areas of development?
Well, the Pear, it's special. It's incredibly intimate. It's small. I think that we have a very, very big dedication to artistic quality. I am really looking forward as we move forward with me. One of my big goals is to improve upon our community relationships and community partnerships and also other partnerships with other theaters. I'm also very, very interested in developing an educational program, not just for youth. I also teach middle school, so I'm surrounded by kids all the time, but I also, and adult kids, but also an educational program for adult actors to practice their craft. It's something that I'm really dedicated to, and we're going to be starting after the first of the year because there's so many actors who want a place, almost like an actor's gymnasium, to stretch and grow and flex their muscles without the stress of an audition, right? Or without the expense of going up to San Francisco and paying thousands of dollars. So we're really looking forward to that at two levels, for the youth and for adult actors who want a place to play.
Great. Yeah. And this would be open to actors who maybe have had less experience.
Yes, and we'd want to make it very, very affordable, and it would be taught by local actors and directors. So exciting.
Great. And this question is for all of you. What are some challenges facing theater companies today?
Finances, audiences. What the big change, and I think that most artistic directors and boards would agree with this, is that this population is moving away from the season ticket into a single ticket. So that makes it difficult to look at the future in terms of budgeting. It's tough because if you're thinking from show to show rather than the big picture, we still have season tickets, but all theaters are trying to bring in the younger generation, and you're talking about a gold star, I want a deal, I want a discount, I'm going to wait till the last minute and see if the price drops, or hey, what do you want to do tonight? Let's go see a play. Oh yeah, there's this exciting thing happening at the Pear, let's go try it. There's a lot of last minute kind of a thing, and so trying to figure out how to work and shape a season around that change is a big challenge. One, if I might say, the one challenge that no theater has in the Bay Area is talent. I've never, been swimming in a community of people that are so incredibly motivated and talented. It's incredible. Actors, directors, designers. It's amazing. I feel very humbled and happy to be part of that world. So that's one problem we don't have.
Very
But
good.
I've noticed you were talking about the younger generation.
Yeah.
You know, the entire media industry is going through a massive revolution right now, trying to figure out how to, whether, cable, on demand, stations, things like that. I've noticed with my niece and nephew, and they'll occasionally come see me, and when I do a show, they never plan more than a day in advance.
It's very,
so
very
it
true.
really, the theater needs to be able to be on demand.
Right.
It's interesting though that one thing I talk with people that come into our audience, and I try to engage them and say, hey, where are you from? And I've got young techies from Google, and the way that they respond to live theater, it's almost like it's a novelty. It's like, oh yeah, I've never been to a play before, or I did back in grade school and I really liked it, so we decided what the heck. Novelty then, so be it, but we're just happy to have them there.
Great, great. Okay. All right, let's turn our attention to An Enemy of the People. What can
Great.
you tell us about the play without giving too much away?
Well, the one thing that I have to say about this play is that it is shockingly relevant and almost nauseatingly timely in a good way. I mean, it's just kind of frightening that the play was written in 1882. The play deals with environmental waste and whistleblowing. Gee, we don't deal with those problems in today's society at all, do we? It's funny, there's the issue in the play comes, a scientist discovers that the water source for the town's biggest economic supplier, which is, it's a spa town, it's a baths. People come to take the waters. And a scientist discovers that the waters are toxic. There are tanneries that are uphill of the spas, and the water is being tainted by chemicals from the tanneries. The problem comes when the scientist tries to expose this issue, and the mayor of the town, who happens to be his brother, tries to shut it down. It's interesting because obviously the play's timely. We deal with these issues all the time. It's like the individual against the voice of the majority. Utilitarianism, greatest good for the greatest number. If one person gets sick, is that worth sacrificing the economic stability of an entire town? So it's an incredible play and incredibly well written.
Okay. And Ron, you are playing Thomas Stockman, who is the scientist.
Correct.
Okay. What drew you to this material?
Pretty much what Betsy just said. It astonishes me that human nature repeats itself over and over and over again. When I read the script, it was like many of the phrases, many of the terms, many of the jingoism and the propaganda that are in the play are things you see every day, almost word for word. And this is 1882. You think things might have changed. And another thing that I found very fascinating was the fact that at this time in 1882, the theory of bacteria causing disease was as controversial as, say, climate change is right now. And so there were people who were still resistant to the idea. So there's also that parallel as well between the current day.
There's a character in the play who talks about, how funny, these animals, millions of animals splashing about, making people sick. How funny is that?
Yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, exactly. It was unfathomable.
Right.
But I normally do a lot of classical theater, I do a lot of comedy, but I actually auditioned for this play because I felt it was a way of trying to contribute to society by getting across a message, and that's not something I do very often. So it was a conscious choice there.
Okay. And Richard,
Yes.
how did you get involved with this project?
Well, to be honest, I first auditioned for it because I saw that there were a lot of male actors around my age. And I thought, well, that
too,
adds
yes.
to a chance that maybe I can get a role. And once I was cast in the role, again, like everybody, how relevant the show is. I think of Flint, Michigan, with their problems with the water, and it's like, my gosh. And then politicians, which I am in the show, what drives them to act the way they do, and what motivates them beyond the situation in the town of making sure the town survives. Why would I want to sacrifice people? What's my thing about that? And I found that to be a fascinating aspect of the character.
Right, yes. Yeah. So this is an adaptation of the original work, a recent one. Tell us about how it's different from the original work or other adaptations that have been done.
Well, I think people are very familiar with Arthur Miller's adaptation of this piece. Rebecca Lenkiewicz her adaptation really refines the language. It's about an hour and a half shorter than Arthur Miller's version, which might be appealing to some people. But there's nothing sacrificed in the storyline, which is surprising. So the story moves. I think it doesn't proselytize as much, and I feel like some of the language has been changed to make it more accessible to an audience, to a modern audience, without sacrificing the intentions of the character and the true, grit behind the plot line. So I'm very excited about it. The adaptation has not been done a lot outside universities and Broadway. So it's kind of thrilling to be doing it here. Yeah, I'm very, very happy. The more I've been working on it, the more grateful I am that we're doing this, because it's finely tuned.
Okay, very good. Great, great. Well, I think it's almost time to see a portion of this adaptation performed by our actors.
Excellent.
So I'm going to excuse Ron and Richard to take their places on our set. And Betsy, what do you want to tell us about this scene before we watch?
We chose this scene because I felt like it was expository, but not dull. Sometimes exposition can be a little dull for audiences. In this scene, the two brothers, the mayor of the town and the scientist, Peter and Thomas, are coming together after Thomas has sent his brother the results of some specimen tests that he has sent away to a lab. He's been waiting for a week for these. He's thrilled. Not that the waters are toxic, but that he's made the discovery.
Right.
He's really excited to share this with his brother because he's hoping to save lives. He's surprised by the way his brother reacts to the situation.
Okay, very good. Let's watch.
It's been over a year since you started probing into this. You didn't think to discuss it with me?
I wanted to be sure of the facts.
And now you are.
You read them.
And you propose to give the results and your statement to the Baths Committee.
Yes, we need to do something about this immediately.
All we can offer our visitors at present is the promise of poisoning, paralysis, pestilence. It's a very nice use of alliteration for dramatic effect.
It's fact, not drama. The waters are toxic. People who are already sick are coming here and bathing in them. They're giving us their savings and their faith in hopes of a cure. They're drinking it, for Christ's sakes.
You recommend that we drain the whole of the Mulladah Swamp and reroute the miles of water pipes.
It's got to be done.
I spoke to the town engineer this morning. I sounded him out gently about possible future work.
No, now, Peter, it has to be now.
He smiled at me as if I were a lunatic. Do you have any idea what we're talking about here? A starting cost of several 100,000 crowns.
Really? That much?
2 years we're talking about.
No, surely they can do it faster than that.
2 years minimum. Meantime, what do? We closed the baths. We'd have no choice. No one would set foot in this town anyway if word of this filtered out.
I don't see any alternative, do you?
Everyone who's booked a room here will stay in a neighboring town instead. They'll cash in on our lost trade. Our repairs budget will doubtless dry up halfway through reconstruction. Basically, you intend to cripple this town.
Cripple?
Our only revenue is as a spa town. So you tell me now, how will we survive?
I don't see what else we can do.
I think you're exaggerating the situation.
If anything, I'm underplaying it. Once summer comes, it'll be a hotbed of disease.
The established water supply to the baths is now a fact and must be treated as such. I'm sure the committee can be persuaded to make a few gradual improvements.
No, we have to overhaul the entire system. You can't hush this up, Peter.
Hush what up?
No, you know me. I can't be a party to lies.
Lies?
Council propaganda veiling the facts.
But I just told you, I'm not convinced there's actual danger.
And these reports, they clearly state that the water is toxic. You don't think these point to a critical situation?
No.
Are you sure that you... Of course you're sure. Are you sure there's not some other aspect of this that's actually worrying you? Isn't it the fact that you chose the original site? You dictated where the pipes were laid. You ignored my recommendations. And now you're terrified of looking incompetent, inept.
I am the moral guardian of this town. People look to me. You cannot present your report to the Baths Committee. It must be suppressed for the general good. I will bring it to their attention, and we will discuss it, but all in good time and discreetly. We will see what can be done about it. Nothing, not a word of this, goes beyond these four walls.
The wheels are in motion, Peter.
Not a word, Thomas.
It's too late. People know.
Which people? You don't mean Hofstad and his shower.
You can't silence an entire newspaper.
You never were very bright, Tom. You don't see the hole you've dug for yourself, do you?
I don't see any hole. Show it to me.
Oh, it's a gaping great hole. Big enough for you, your wife, your 3 children.
What do you say?
I've helped you, haven't I?
And I've been grateful.
I don't want your gratitude. It's been for my sake as much as yours. Do you think a person in my position can afford to be associated with scandal?
You think I'm scandalous?
You invite controversy.
I do not.
You do. You need to scream and write about every new idea or complaint you have. You need to see your own anger in the paper before you can truly feel it.
It's my duty to say what I feel to the public.
You've always been a selfish bastard.
Thank you. Thank you to our actors for giving us a sneak peek into An Enemy of the People. And that was Ron Talbot playing Thomas Stockman, the scientist, and Richard Holman playing Peter Stockman, the mayor, and Thomas's brother. So tell us a little bit more about your characters and your experience with this scene. Do you need a minute?
One of the things I find very interesting about Thomas, and I tried to get it across a little bit at the beginning of the scene, is he has made this discovery, and it's kind of a terrible discovery. I mean, people have been drinking and bathing in water with typhoid in it. But I'm very excited because I'm a scientist, and I've actually, and the whole theory of bacteria is, vital at the time. And so I have this kind of push me, pull me, where it's like, yeah, I figured it out. And then suddenly, as the play goes on, I start to realize the implications are more than I had realized because I was so buried in my science.
Right. Well, for me, it's this scene brings up a lot of the sibling rivalry theme. And earlier in the play, we kind of discussed, who gets the credit, and then in this scene, he brings up, aren't you the one who's going to feel incompetent? And for me, that's a direct poke at my standing in the town and how I value myself. And from that, I think I can control him. But then it comes out he's told other people. So now my wheels are starting to engage further. What more do I have to do? But I have to stop him first. And if I can stop him, then I'll move on to the next problem.
Okay. So do you, when you're preparing for a role, do you develop backstories for your characters? And have you kind of talked about what your brotherly relationship was between Thomas and Peter before this point?
We had no choice. She forced us. There's this thing in acting called table work.
Okay.
And it's where you sit around. It's one of my favorite parts of theater, where we talk about our characters and our backstories, and we discuss it among the directors and the various actors. And so yes, the answer to your question is yes.
For an outsider coming in and watching actors and a director do table work, it must be like a bunch of kids sitting around playing make-believe. Because we talk about, well, what do you think? What do you think happened when they were small boys? What was that relationship like? Was it, antagonistic? We've got a younger brother, older brother. Did you share? Are the patterns that we see in this scene something that you've been living out over and over and over again?
Right.
And it is important because then there's someplace to go back to. There's subtext, there's a through line.
Right.
I didn't, in this, our particular dynamic here, we didn't have a chance right now to do a lot of exploration about our backstory, but, I'm sure Ron did as well, but, I developed my own backstory and I'm always reminded of something a friend of mine, as a psychologist, said is, it's not necessarily what happened to you as a kid, it's how you perceive what happened to you. And so you can still make your backstory without, like Ron and I haven't had a chance to develop ours together, but how I grew up, which brought me to this point.
And that's why you shouldn't, because
Yeah.
it's different for the
Exactly.
individual.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, I think of my sister and I, you know, we grew up in the same house, and yet she remembers roast beef every Sunday, and I'm remembering fish sticks and tater tots. So,
It's interesting.
I think one of the things about Thomas is, I think he had a much nicer kind of image of his brother because he's so shocked by what happens between the two of them during the show. I think he was a little more idealistic and optimistic about, and didn't realize how he had changed.
I haven't really changed. That's,
But I didn't
yeah.
perceive that.
Right,
Exactly.
right. Well, perhaps as a scientist, Thomas is, you know, maybe less attuned to kind of interpersonal issues
Exactly.
like that.
Yeah, typecasting. Yes.
Right.
Well, and as I've gotten older, you know, I'm rather austere and a lonely, you know, isolated person, and I've only gotten more since you've been away.
Not married, no children.
Right.
You know, so.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yourself.
I did for a moment too.
I
was like, you're
you
not
up. I
austere.
set you up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well done, sir.
Just keep the show moving.
All right. Well, you two have known each other for a long time.
Yes.
And you've worked together before as actors.
Yes, we have.
So how has that sort of helped you collaborate for this production now, or has it not helped you?
Wouldn't you say that trust? I mean, I think there's something about working with somebody that you trust that opens you up as an actor. It's one hurdle that you don't have to get over, because I always like to say that in acting you're only as good as your scene partner sometimes, and you feed off of each other. And if you have the kind of relationship where you know that you have each other's back, it makes life so much easier.
Yeah, and you know, Richard is such a talented actor, and I've always admired him. And then he went away for a while because he had to raise children, and so I'm so excited that he's back.
Okay, I am too.
Thank you. Embarrassing me. Yes, Ron and I did a show 20 some odd years ago.
What was the show?
He was 10. The Rivals.
Oh, you did The Rival.
We did, and we didn't have, I don't know if we had much to do with each other, but we were in the show together, and I also, you know, you've seen a lot of shows around, and I've seen Ron, and I mentioned to you this, first time I ever saw Ron was when he did The Madness of King George, which was an excellent show. I didn't know Ron at the time. He was fantastic. And so then when we did The Rivals, I was very intimidated, you know, thinking, oh my God, you know, I'm going to have to up my game, and I don't know if I have any game to up. So it was, so now that we're here, 20, you know, I still think, oh
And now-
yeah,
now
he's
he
a
knows
good
he
actor.
shouldn't-
The love fest.
Now he knows he shouldn't have been intimidated at all.
Jeez, are you still going to pay me for saying those nice things about you?
yes, I am. Okay.
So, Betsy, you have been an actor at the Pair also.
I have.
How does your experience as an actor inform your directing?
You know, it's interesting. People ask that a lot, and for me, one definitely informs the other, right? As an actor, I think when you're directing, you're thinking about the actors. You're thinking about how can you get them to the place where you know or you sense that they can go, and trying to find a way for them to connect, not only the ideas in the play, right, to communicate that to an audience, but how to manifest that, both, you know, physically and vocally, and how to get them there. And it's interesting because, you know, every actor has a different way. It's kind of like being a teacher in a classroom. Every child has a different way of learning, and every actor gets to their goal in a different way. So I think being an actor, you know, I am empathic to that. I really understand that, I hope. And that's, I think, the biggest thing.
Okay.
I'm a very visual director. I see the play, all of it in my mind manifest itself visually, you know, before it's there, and that kind of guides me through it. I love spatial direction. I love to think about the way things are playing out and how it affects the audience, you know, by the way you place things in space. And I think that it comes from acting as well, somewhat.
Right.
Yeah, it's wonderful to do both, but they're so very different.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I really like doing both.
Great. And Ron and Richard, how is it being directed by someone who is also an actor?
Oh God.
Jesus.
What happened to the love fest?
What I like about it, which relates to what Betsy just said, is directors who are real actors, I've had a few directors who claim to be actors, understand that everybody has a different process. And thus they're much more flexible, and they're much more, they have a greater ability to get the most out of people. Whereas directors who have just directed their entire life sometimes are very rigid and they want everybody's process to be the same way and
As
to take
theirs.
the same step, what their image is, since they've never actually acted.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And-
some directors are very, dictatorial, and I usually find those are the ones who haven't acted much or at all. I find directors who've acted some more are much more keen to let you play around, and they don't expect your performance to be set by the second week of, the rehearsals.
Right, right. Great.
Nor do we want them to, because as an actor, you understand that the process and the organic nature of developing it, you have to go through something. You can't just memorize your lines and go, opening, right? It's like growing a garden, right? You
I've
have
had
to,
directors like that.
Yes.
you prune it, you water it. It takes time to grow. You cannot come in with something set in stone. Then there's nothing real about that. It's
gonna
not your
change a
own.
little every night because people say things a little differently.
It's the nature of live
Right.
theater.
Live theater.
Yeah, yeah,
Keeps you on your toes.
yeah, yeah. So when when something comes out a little differently, does anyone ever say, "Oh, yeah, do it that way"?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The happy accident.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
something
Okay.
will happen in rehearsal that you never planned, and you're like, yes, yes, keep it, please keep it.
My problem is I usually have that happy accident closing weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
So only one audience ever
Got
gets
to
to
see
see me
it.
do it right.
And you just go, ah, no. It's so true.
Okay, well, you open in about 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, very exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this promises to be a very exciting night of theater in an intimate space. The pair
Yes.
seats about 70.
70 to 85,
Okay.
about in there, depending on the seating arrangement.
All
And
right.
the townspeople.
Great, great. Okay.
There is humor in this play.
Okay,
There is.
thank
It's
you
a
for
very
saying
serious
that.
play.
Okay.
It deals with very serious topics, but there are some, Ask Laxon, which is a smaller character, he's the printer. He's going to steal the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just steal
He's
it
gonna
and run
try.
out the door.
He's gonna try.
and,
Okay.
yeah, and
Great.
so it's not just angst the entire
Not at all.
Okay,
Not at all.
great. All right. Well, let's recap for our viewers that the adaptation of Ibsen's An Enemy of the People by Rebecca Linkovich is running at the Pear Theater in Mountain View from October 20th through November 12th. And could you tell our viewers where they can go to get more information about the show? Maybe a URL?
Yes, www.thepair.org.
Okay, great, thank you. And Peninsula Backstage has a URL also. We're on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/peninsula-backstage. Like our page if you're interested in getting updates when new episodes become available for viewing online and on the air. And once again, I'd like to thank our guests from the Pear Theater, Betsy Cruz-Craig and
Thank
Ron
you.
Talbot and Richard Holman. Thank you
you.
for being with us today. And I'd like to thank our viewers. Well, we appreciate your watching this episode of Peninsula Backstage, and remember to go out and support local live theater.
Yay.
Yay!